Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
That's so much fun. Hello, David, and welcome to all of our listeners. This is the Feeling Good podcast, episode 367. And today we have a returning favorite podcast guest, Truong. As you all remember, hopefully, Tyann lives and practices in Oklahoma. She has a business, TEAM CBT training. Her main modality for providing treatment to her patients is TEAM CBT, and she also provides a lot of training and supervision to TEAM CBT therapists, clinicians who want to become more proficient in TEAM CBT. So welcome, Tyann. We're so happy to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. It's just always such an honor.
It's always fun having you on, and we always get a lot of good emails and feedback as well, and learn a lot from our podcast with you. And I'm sure today will be no exception, because you're taking us into one of the most, to my way of thinking, difficult areas of psychotherapy, working with troubled couples. And it's hard enough working with individuals with troubled relationships, because 50 to 70% of the time, they don't even want help. They just want you to know what a pill the other person has. But when you have two of them in the room at the same time, then it's like treating two people with borderline personality disorder, and they take turns trying to sabotage the treatment. But there is a brilliant and fantastic way to get around that. And Tyann will reveal the secrets in today's podcast.
Tyann, I'm going to read a very brief endorsement before you jump in with your incredible teaching to us about relationship work. And this is from Guilia. And she wrote just briefly, David, you and Rhonda are doing such amazing work with the podcast. Each episode is pure gold and extremely therapeutic in itself. You both have inspired me to study psychology and hopefully get certified in TEAM CBT one day. Yes, and we are so happy.
Thank you so much. And what was this person's name?
Guilia.
Guilia. Did I get that right?
Guilia.
Oh, Guilia.
Guilia.
Guilia. Well, thank you, Guilia. That was very thoughtful and kind of you to send us those warm words, and we really appreciate it, and wish you the best as well.
Yeah, so Tyann, you've put together like a process based on TEAM CBT for your work with troubled couples. Tell us about it.
Yes, I really love working with couples. Originally, I had mainly had a focus on working only with postpartum women, just going through my own struggle, and that led me to be passionate about being a resource to help them through their healing journey. And then I realized all of my postpartum women were upset and resentful towards their partners for not doing more, not helping more, etc. And I was initially only doing the relationship work for one, as Dr. Burns has taught us. And then I had just encountered some blocks, and it all started with a client that she truly couldn't complete the relationship journal, because as we were exploring her husband's feelings, she said, I really don't know. I know this is the moment of conflict. I know he shut down. And I tried to press for more information, which she was able to identify just made things worse, which is the brilliance of Dr. Burns, where we help them identify their own errors in that process and how it actually impacts the other person and gets them stuck in these cycles that they don't like. But she was exploring his feelings, and she said, when he shuts down, I truly have no idea. Is he sad? Is he upset with me? Is he angry? And then I just proposed to her what she thought about bringing him into the room so we could really understand his perspective. And I felt nervous about that, like it wasn't my typical go-to in the relationship work. But bringing him in, then it seemed to have opened up for us being able to get unstuck and being able to explore, oh, in that moment when he was shutting down, he was actually feeling inadequate, which it would like shocked her because she said she just really didn't know. He talked about feeling like when she brings up negative things that's going on in the house that they just bought, or negative things about what's going on with the children, he felt inadequate and he felt like he was being like not a good enough husband. So in addition
so she'd been forcing him to shut down.
Right. And we didn't realize he was feeling all of this in these moments that she said, I'm just sharing with him about my day. And anytime anything's like just not happy or exciting, he seems to shut down. And then we realize from his perspective, she's often bringing up the things that are wrong. Like, oh, the house is like breaking down. It has a smell in the basement. The kids stayed up so late overnight. I'm exhausted. And so he saw her complaints as criticisms of how she's just unhappy in this life that they've created together. And that was just really enlightening for her to then actually be able to hear from him, hear his feelings, and then we could actually explore how they both actually played a part in creating each other's responses. Because the more he shut down, the more she was likely to actually try to share more of her feelings and bring up the things that were wrong because she's just seeking validation. And then the more that she actually brought up these complaints, instead of sharing words of appreciation, sharing things about like how much she cared about how hard he worked, which means so much to him, he was more likely to be distant and shut down and to push her away. And so in that process, it's probably been about 4 years in the making where I've looked at these different ways to work with two people in the TEAM framework. But that was where it started, on realizing like when we do get stuck in the relationship work, for one, pulling in the other person allowed us to just really see the other person's perspective, see even their good intentions underneath the shutdown. Like he said, I didn't want to make things worse. I didn't know how to respond when I feel inadequate. We can
say that again. Who said I don't have to respond when I feel inadequate? That was his position, or did I get that wrong?
Yeah, it was from him, where we're starting to explore like when you're engaging in these what initially seems like maladaptive responses, like shutting down or just typically complaining, what's actually truly going on underneath that.
Yeah.
And that led me to looking at positively reframing these communication errors as just another way to look at outcome resistance and why they engage in shutting down, or why do they engage in, for her, it was like multiple complaints about her day. And I call that piece just like looking at the positive intentions behind the maladaptive behavior, which is pulling in more of like your mood work, Dr. Burns, on looking at all of your emotions have some benefit or value. And then I started to see that with all of your list of communication errors. Why is someone engaging in truth? Why is someone engaging in defensiveness? I'm actually trying to have you see my perspective when I engage in truth. I'm yearning for understanding. I'm yearning for connection. So let's
slow down just one point, because you're moving fast, and maybe some of our listeners won't quite get it because it's almost even fast for me. But let's go back before the truth thing. And you were saying that you were using positive reframing to help them both see why he shut down. And I thought that was terrific. Maybe you could just expand on that a little bit and then go into the positive reframing of truth and defensiveness.
And Tyann, as you're talking to, let's define some of the terms you're using, positive reframing, and you mentioned already process and outcome resistance.
Yeah, let me slow down a little bit. I'm getting excited and I realized we're spitting out a lot of team language and some people may be listening to this the first time. But yeah, using the team structure with the couple, there's measurements. So I still do the brief mood survey and I do measurements with them, see where they're both at in the relationship satisfaction. I make sure we do a lot of empathy where they both have 20 out of 20 in how they perceive my empathy for them. And that's using Dr. Burns's evaluation of therapy session. And then we're talking about the relationship journal, which I see as starting with the A in team, where that's the specificity. Let's get a moment in time when we saw a moment of conflict or a moment of disconnect for the couple. And as they both are able to identify their own feelings and their own errors, then I get into positively reframing each of their communication errors. So for this man, he often shuts down, he'll avoid feelings. At times we'll get defensive. And so when we're ready to address outcome resistance, which we're looking at, what are the reasons why they may not want to change these errors, or why would they not want to change these patterns that initially appear maladaptive, is we see there's often a benefit or a value even behind these behaviors that initially feel so maladaptive. So shutting down, you're pushing your spouse away. But in looking at that, I even have the wife look at positively reframing his errors. And then he may look at that behavior himself as to, why is this here? Why do I shut down? How does it serve me? What is it doing for me? And then we started to explore that shutting down feels safe for me. It protects me from feeling more hurt or hearing more criticism, and shut down and avoid.
I'm going to list these, so slow down. So the first benefit or advantage or positive thing about shutting down, which we might think as a communication error, the lack of I feel statements and kind of passive aggression or any kind of labels you want to put on it. Instead of looking at those, we're going to be looking at some of the awesome and positive things about this so-called dysfunctional behavior. And one thing you said, when I shut down, it feels safe and protects me from criticism. Did I get that right?
Yes, exactly.
What else? Tell us more about that. What are some other awesome and beautiful things about shutting down?
Yeah, and I have a whole list that I could even send to you. I'm not sure if that could be helpful.
Well, let's just brainstorm. It's fun to do it together.
Absolutely.
What are some other cool things about shutting down?
Yeah. I've had people say, when I shut down, I then can even protect my partner from saying things that are hurtful or making things worse.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down.
It's not only protective of me, but it could be protective of the partner as well.
It protects partner from my hurtful statements. Hearing that thing, I think I should shut down more often.
Yeah. To see they feel less shame, because we've already identified these are your errors and this is how it negatively impacts your relationship. Right. But just like positive reframing of the mood, this starts to then release shame.
Sure, just bringing a new dimension there into the couple's work. How about a third one? See, why do I want to protect my partner from hurtful statements or conflict? Why would I want to do that? What does that show about me that's positive and awesome?
Yeah, I think it shows I value our marriage and at least maintaining and not making things worse. Right.
Uh-huh.
Value their feelings.
Yeah, and could it also the desire not to hurt your wife or your husband, could that be an expression of your love for that person?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of a shutdown is an expression of love.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's
even self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say more about that, Diane. Why do you say self-love?
For a lot of people, shutting down is like, let me go into a space of safety because I'm in this space that feels dangerous. And so shutting down feels protective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can escape hurt. I can get away from criticisms. I can make sure I don't make things worse and I don't add hurt or add fuel to the fire, even though the shutting down sometimes has felt that way to the partner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there a passive-aggressive dimension, looking at the negative side rather than the positive side of shutting down? Is it a way of, freezing the other person out? That Robert Frost poem, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and will suffice. And so on some level, the shutdown is a form of ice saying you're not worth the air that comes out of my mouth. You're not worth communicating with. How could we reframe that? Because that's a very real dynamic. You've been hurting me, so I'm going to hurt you by refusing to talk to you.
I think it even, for one, that was a powerful quote, Dr. Burns. But even seeing that, there's a lot of protective factors. So the real benefits is I'm protecting myself from more hurt if I give you ice, right? And it's even like my way of having a voice in my own way. Like there's a sense of like, when I disengage from you, I have more control than just trying to make attempts to try to feel heard or validated, which hasn't gone anywhere. Let me
I want you to see how much you've hurt me that I don't can't even dare to enter into a dialogue with you because I'm so hurt and so angry. And because I'm, I don't feel loved or respected or cared about. And you keep telling me what's wrong with the house and, feel like I'm being criticized and put down as a failure as a husband or something like that is maybe where he's coming from, something like that. And then what is he asking for? What is he yearning for? What that he's not getting from her? What does he want from her?
Yeah, we ultimately realized as we were exploring needs is he really needed to feel appreciated.
So it shows his desire for being appreciated. That sounds positive.
Right.
And why does he want her to appreciate him?
Yeah, they had a really interesting dynamic where she said it felt really vulnerable for her to express like gratitude. That was just like a given in their home that they are grateful for each other or they love each other. And he said, but if she never tells me thanks or that she appreciates me, how could I know?
Sure.
And so they were both realizing he didn't speak up about how hurtful it was when he heard all of these complaints throughout the day and never a word of appreciation. And she didn't realize how she was coming off and how she assumed he knew that she, of course, loved him and appreciated him, but almost never expressed, like, I appreciate how hard you work, or you're so present for the kids. And so when we did communication training, she would start by actually just providing genuine affirmations and And you're asking, why does he need appreciation from her? I think in his words, he said, it means the world. Like all of the hard work that I go through then is worth it when I can hear that, oh, my family is in a better space because of my hard work, or my family is better off, and that I can hear that. It gave him motivation to, he said it just meant the world, and it gave him motivation to just continue through hardships, through raising their children.
So his desire to be appreciated is an expression of how much he loves her.
Yeah.
So he doesn't tell the garbage man he wants appreciation. So that's neat. Now I'll turn it over to you, Rhonda, but that's neat the way you're using positive reframing in the midst of conflict, because when we look at conflict, we always see the negative side and see everybody's negative motives and negative impact of what people do to each other, as well as how addicted people seem to be to that blame and victimhood and aggression. And you're saying let's turn it upside down and look at the positive underbelly of all of this. That's very cool. Rhonda, I'll shut up now.
Oh no, I just love what you're saying, David, and how you're bringing this to life with Tyann about the patients, the couple that she worked with. I just wanted to say that, Tyann, lots of times people say, oh, why do you need appreciation from me? And can't you generate that internally for yourself? And I love how you said that it can be seen as motivation, and it encourages people to continue doing their best or continue on the path of providing for their family in whatever way they're doing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I really liked your summary of that, Rhonda, where as social beings, it's not like we need appreciation to survive, or we need loving words to survive. But it does feel like there's just this yearning for connection in all of us, right? And it almost feels like an emotional need, even if it's not a physical survival need, of just like, when you appreciate me, I feel seen. I feel heard. I feel like you know me and you appreciate my efforts. And when we can hear that from the people who matter to us, it is motivational to show up in the best way when we feel seen, and seen for the good in us as well.
And can I add, do you think it also makes people feel safe in their relationship, in their sphere of life? They feel safer when they're being appreciated, not so isolated and alone.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think there's emotional safety in that. So we need physical safety to survive, but emotional safety feels really important too. And when we positively reframed her tendency to complain, and he was starting to able to see, I think she's needing validation. She's actually just looking for a statement like, honey, I'm sorry you've had such a hard day. You work so hard to take care of our family. And then we realized she needed to be seen and to be appreciated too. So usually when she's saying how hard it's been, like, after staying home with my youngest just for 6 months, I've had just such a greater appreciation for stay-at-home moms and truly how hard that work is. Physically, emotionally, even spiritually, it's trying. And she was actually yearning from him to see and appreciate, like, yeah, you're bringing in the money, but I'm here keeping our children alive and thriving and homeschooling. And she also just needed some words of like, man, I'm sorry you've had a hard day. And it is hard caring for the 3 kids, isn't it? And I appreciate how much you dedicate to our children. And so it's really interesting once we look at, okay, she's constantly complaining, that's maladaptive. But what's underneath that? A yearning to be seen, a yearning to be validated. It benefits me. I'm trying to have a voice about the challenges, right? And then when he could positively reframe her maladaptive behaviors, they started to see each other in a different light and feel safer with each other as well. And so it's been really moving work. I mean, this way that Dr. Burns has looked at outcome resistance through our mood work, I think has been completely life-changing for us as practitioners, for our clients. And then when we look at using the same power of that positive reframe to mood work and looking at people's relationships and their communication errors and maladaptive ways of approaching things, it's actually been quite moving and healing, not just for each other to see, but for me as the therapist, I start to feel differently about them as well. I admire them more. I can see them more deeply. I could see their values more deeply and what they're actually really yearning for.
Oh yeah, I love what you're saying. They when we're in conflict with people, we get locked into a form of mind reading, which I guess is about as deep as superficial can be. Everyone knows that, but we attribute negative motives to the other person, and we label the other person, and we see them in a very negative light. And once we've done that, we act in according to that vision, which actually forces the other person to be exactly the way we're imagining, which makes us think that we're right about their motives. And one of the techniques that we use sometimes, it's a more sophisticated technique, and we use it with individuals, but it's with conflict with someone, but it fits exactly into what you're saying is forced empathy. The technique where someone is actually forced to see the world through the eyes of the other person. And I'm thinking of a session I had, and you too may or may not be familiar with it, but was with a beautiful young Indian woman who was a doctor, as I recall, in New York. And she fell in love with an Indian guy from Boston who was a businessman. And I had the chance to meet them both, and he was really, really cool as well. But the problem was that her father was refusing to come to their planned wedding because in the Indian way, the parents match you up with your husband or wife, and it's a terrible violation of Indian customs and rules and ethics and values to go take the American way and find someone and fall in love with them. And she was especially troubled because she'd always felt really close to her father, and they had a great relationship all the time when she was growing up. And now they were, absolutely at odds with each other. And she wasn't going to let go of this idea that he should not be so unloving, that he should love her and accept her because she has found a wonderful husband, and all she wants is for everyone to be loving and happy. And he was appearing to be very mean and angry and judgmental. And of course, every time they interacted, as you were saying, Tyann, they were involved in truth and blame, and I'm right and you're wrong, and you better admit it. And, it was absolutely in a stalemate for months. And what kind of broke it open was I was talking with the font of all wisdom, Jill Levitt, and about it. And she said, well, maybe she isn't thinking about the fact that, her father has always been a very moral man, and that's what she loved about him. That he wasn't into bribery or corruption, and he was a man who always followed, the way of truth and the right rules and laws and so forth. And that was one of the things she admired about him. But that was why he was clinging to this idea that he couldn't, give his blessing to this marriage, would not even come and attend the wedding ceremony. And once she saw that, it was the reason, his motive was the very thing that she loved and admired the most about him. And then the next time they talked, when she brought this up, and then he softened, and they were able to, find a loving relationship again. And he came and attended their wedding, and then they sent me photos of the wedding, and it was one of those elaborate Indian weddings with tremendous color and costumes, and it was really a happy event. But it's very much, I think, what you're saying, Tyann, is to be looking to be positively reframing the motives of the other person. Rather than putting them in a black box of badness and blame and I'm right and you're wrong, and you like to hurt me, and you want to control me, and all of these motives that we put into people's minds. And it's not a trivial thing, because right now I've never seen the world. Well, I was born right toward the end of World War II, so I didn't see any of World War II. I heard about it as I was growing up, and how polarized and hateful things were then. But the world's getting that way again now, and it's the same thing with the Republicans and the Democrats. Labeling each other and resorting to violence, and people have very little priority on seeing the positive motives behind the other person's point of view. And I hope the human race survives this crisis we're in right now. There's probably a greater than 0% chance that we won't survive. I feel like we're in tremendous danger. So although you're having a sweet, nice podcast on, tips on treating troubled couples, it's really tips on understanding a troubled world. And that's my elderly rant.
Yeah, I think it's powerful what you said, Dr. Burns. This is actually, it is like the forced empathy exercise, where we're forced to be in the other person's shoes. And for a moment, just pause from seeing them as the bad guy that's just trying to hurt me, put me down, be superior over me, and really see this person as another human being who has values. And often behind our actions, there's a need or yearning. I'm trying to get something that's important to me. There's something that matters to me. And if we can do that, whether it's with our partner or our parent or our friends or a person from the other end of the political spectrum, it can be very healing.
All right. Now, are you ready for a hard problem?
Nervous.
Challenging.
Well, before we do that, I love how you were talking about that this was between a father and a daughter. So when we're talking about relationship healing, we're not just talking about an intimate relationship, but we're talking about all relationships.
That's right.
Like father, daughter, etc.
Yeah.
So thank you for that example. I love that.
Right. And the idea being that if you'll allow yourself, and you probably won't, listeners, you probably enjoy being a victim and blaming and hating others. And if you say, no, I'm not, then you're also a liar. Because we all have that in our bones to some or a very, very great extent. But here's a advanced calculus problem that they were working on at the Princeton Advanced Study Institute for Human Relationships, and no one could solve it. But I said, Tyann, I'll ask her, and she'll give the answer. I'm person X, and I have a relative, let's say, who's a big Trump supporter. And he thinks that Trump walks on water and refuses to see that Trump is a liar, a thief, a criminal, someone who's trying to exploit the very people who are his followers. And this person I'm thinking of should not think that way. And so I have all of this, let's say, anger and blame and indignance about it. So how do I use the patented Tyann positive reframing technique to assuming I would want a better relationship. And that's the first question people always have to answer, because if you don't want a better relationship, then you're not going to want to do any of these things. You want to just sit back and enjoy your hateful relationship. But anyway, if in the unlikely event that someone in the world did want to improve their relationship with someone they're pissed off at, how would I use this, Tyann? Is this possible, or is this beyond the pale?
I think you made a really important point, was first exploring, do I want to get closer to this person? Because there's different routes that we can take if you actually don't want to get closer. But if you actually decided that this relationship is important to me, I want to get closer to this person. And we're in this section where you've identified the moment in time, as I may hear this relative just really praise Trump, and then I'm struggling with that and having that same perspective.
Right.
We
Exactly.
can first, and the person doing the personal work may see like they're both engaging in different errors, right? But if they were positively reframing their relative's errors, this error may be like truth, or they may be defending Trump. And the positive reframing behind that would be, I'm yearning to feel heard. I'm yearning for some validation, right? And even if I can't fully see from your perspective, maybe I could work to find out what your needs are for me to just see your deeper values. So
they have some values that they're thinking that Trump represents, and those values themselves have great value and are quite worthwhile. And so if you can identify what those are, that would be something that you could agree with the other person on and heighten that common ground. Someone once asked me, if you were president of the United States, who would you make your foreign policy advisor? And I said, who was that guy that bombed the Trade Center in New York?
That bombed the trades?
That arranged the planes to go into the Trade Center.
Is it Osama bin Laden?
Osama, yeah. I say I'd make Osama bin Laden on my cabinet as my foreign policy advisor. And the person says, "But that's ridiculous. That's stupid. Why would you do that?" Because he can tell me why so many people hate Americans and what we're doing that's turning people off, and help me tune into the intense religious beliefs and behind what I see as atrocious sadistic behavior, but to see the positive behind that. But it is so difficult for people to do that, because it seems like, oh, you're just giving in to evil type of thing, and there certainly is a time when you have to stand up and fight. But the power of seeing things in a positive way through the eyes of the other person, it's a tremendous thing, which you experienced and talked about on a recent podcast, Rhonda. And I got jealous because you've been getting nothing but fan mail ever since. I said, she's getting more fan mail than I am, damn it.
All you have to do is expose your flaws, and people love that.
Yeah. But maybe you can, although it was recent, could you just briefly summarize that?
That was an interaction I had with my daughter-in-law when she was a new mother, Tyann, of a 2-month-old, twins actually, and
with postpartum.
It was
postpartum stuff,
and yeah, she had very serious medical consequences of the birth that she hadn't completely recuperated from, and I was visiting, and I was feeling impatient that she wasn't bathing the children as regularly as I thought she should be, and I confronted her like, oh, like what's the big deal? Just bathe the babies. Who cares? I mean, like, I mean, wasn't quite so callous, but
almost.
Almost. I didn't say who cares. There's like, what is the big deal? Just bathe the babies. It's fun. It will be fun. And she got very angry at me, and I didn't feel like I deserved it, of course. But I said a very sort of patented 5 secrets, just like, okay, I will hit all 5 of these steps, but I didn't really mean it in my heart. And in the response to my first 5 secrets, it was enough for us to like have a détente, so to speak. But then we just still didn't get close with each other. And I had to think about it for a day and realized I was blaming her. I was not seeing the beauty in what she was doing. I was not acknowledging how she was actually doing everything she could to overcome her anxiety. And
her fear was her love for her babies.
Exactly. Her fear was an expression of her love for her babies. And once I could bring that to our conversation, once I could share that with her, our relationship just blossomed, and it was really a beautiful moment for the two of us. And I completely give David credit for that, because before knowing the 5 secrets, I would have just gone harumphed away and had tension in our relationship. And that would have probably skewed over to my relationship with our son. And now, instead of having that long living tension, we all just have a much more relaxed and open relationship with a lot of love. So really, David, I thank you for that.
Yeah, and that's a form of enlightenment. And then you get into that, and it seems so easy to get close to anybody, and your ego has dissolved. But then a few days later, you're back to your defensive, unenlightened self, feeling pissed off at somebody, and being stuck back in your own mindset, coming back but thank you, Rhonda. That's such a beautiful story. Now you're going to get a whole bunch more fan mail, and it's going to piss me off even more. But you deserve every bit of it. But tell us more, Tyann. So far, what I've gotten from you is if we use positive reframing, which you can use positive reframing for any negative emotion. So if this person who's kind of being mean to you as you see it, and criticizing you or doing all these things that you're complaining about, you could take their anger and see the positives behind their anger, the beautiful things, or their anxiety, or their rage, or their defensiveness, or their unwillingness to communicate. And instead of seeing this as their communication errors and their defects and their objectionable, irritating behavior, that if you can see the positive behind what they're doing, and then share that with the other person, it will, this is very simplistic, but greatly soften the interaction and allow both of you to kind of open up and become more vulnerable. Is that partially what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So in your mood work, you're saying we could positively reframe any emotion that initially appears negative, anger, anxiety, worthlessness, and see that there's a benefit or a value to it. And then just applying this to a communication error, we can apply it not just to the emotions and thoughts, but to the behaviors, very much like the triple paradox with habits work that you've created, Dr. Burns. Then I found that people start to feel safer, less defensive, more seen, instead of just being seen as the bad guy. And when they start to feel safer, I think they get less extreme. And so even if a relative is saying like, oh, they're really hanging on to their political views, like you're saying, this relative sees that Trump walks on water, they probably get more extreme the more that you put them down. The more you just see them as an idiot, and whoever you're voting for is an idiot, they're more likely to be more extreme in their views and in their expression. But if we could take a moment to see, like, what is this person trying to get here or trying to communicate? Maybe they're trying to feel heard about one aspect of what they're sharing. And if you could even make a statement, I can even think of a dynamic in our family. where I'm more left leaning and my brother's more right leaning. And instead of calling him an idiot for, whatever.
What is his first name?
My brother?
Yeah.
His name is Tai Hui.
That's the name of my brother. Sounds
it
might
is.
be the same person.
That's amazing.
Because you're telling my story now. Yeah, because that
Yeah,
person I was referring to is my brother.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
But continue with what you're saying.
Right. And so for a moment, if we could still see they're a person that has values in something, they're not just an idiot or a dummy. And then when we're talking about communication training, if we can make a statement that doesn't make them feel like they're just this black and white dumb person, like I can even then make a statement to my brother, like, I do appreciate that Trump is actually the only modern president who hasn't started a new war. And our family understands how war impacts us. And coming from the Vietnam War, that's something that is important to you. And so I can appreciate that. And then when I can make a statement that even leans a little bit of seeing your perspective, seeing your values, seeing the good in you, then he can get less extreme. But just like in Rhonda's story, it truly does take humility. I could see why you got so much fan mail for that, Rhonda, because it took like truly being humble. We're also looking at, we have to address this process resistance, that this work is hard. And after I do the positive reframing, I go into what is the cost of change? And I share with them, you will have to solely look at your part and being willing to shift how you typically come across, where you can honor all of these values and even get these benefits while shifting your behaviors. And it's hard work. It takes humility. It takes looking at your part. It's painful. Sounds like all the things that Rhonda did in her example with her daughter-in-law. Makes so much sense that once she did that, it can mend that relationship and mend that hurt. And so once I do the positive reframing and looking at the cost of change, then the brilliance of your model, Dr. Burns, is I'm not the one telling them how they need to change. We do voicing the resistance. So I'm saying, when you shut down, you're protecting yourself from getting more hurt. Why would you want to change that?
So you were mentioning the double paradox. We also have triple paradox, but sticking with double paradox, see if I can understand what you're saying. So if you're working with a patient or client or whatever word, human being, you can use that word, who's in a troubled relationship, you could ask them to list all the positive reasons to continue doing what they're doing, what it shows about their core values that's positive and awesome, and how it's helpful for them to close down, to shut the other person out, not to communicate with the other person. And then you could also list the disadvantages of working to improve the relationship. So that would be a double paradox.
It's a double paradox, yeah, from your habits work.
And on both sides of the ledger there, and it could probably turn it into a triple paradox too. I can't think that fast right at the moment, but certainly the double paradox would be very powerful. So on both sides, we're arguing for the person not to change. We're becoming the voice of their subconscious resistance, all the good reasons not to see the positives in the other person, all the good reasons to blame them, to criticize them, to label them. You feel emotionally superior. You know that you're right, and truth is on your side. And these are like all the advantages of blame on the blame cost benefit analysis. But then on the other side, you can put the disadvantages of trying to change and improve it, because you're going to have to be humble. You're going to have to experience the death of the self, and you're going to have to give up all the joys of feeling morally superior and so forth. Is that what you're suggesting? That we do this kind of double paradox?
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought the double is easier than the triple because the double, I just kind of combined the benefits and the values, which is the positive reframe of
Oh,
the
I see what you
Aries.
mean. Yeah, yeah, that makes it real
Yeah.
clear. Yeah, the benefits and what it shows about your core values. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Can I
And
jump in
then
for a second, right, Doctor? I mean,
no.
ooh,
Tiana and I are having a
okay.
great exchange here. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you said something, and sometimes you say this a little tongue in cheek when you say the joys of feeling moral superiority, but there's a lot
That's
of there's so much truth in that.
Oh, absolutely. That's why the world is on the edge of going into chaos right now,
Mhm. Yeah.
because that's the thing that people don't want to give up, and it feels so true and so addictive
Hmm.
to feel morally superior to these. What are we wokey? Is
Yeah.
that what we are? We're to feel superior to those wokey people in Oklahoma and California. There's not many wokey people in Oklahoma, but California is loaded with them, or those brain damaged Trump supporters, and that and so we feel like we're on the good team, and
Exactly.
that man that is so powerful. Did either of you see that movie? I think it was called Needful Things.
No, never heard of it.
It was a Stephen King movie about this fellow who moves into a small Midwestern town to start an antique store, and the guy is from an Ingmar Bergman movie. He's one of those Swedish actors, those tall, mysterious types of people. And everyone's curious, it's a real small town and everyone knows each other. And who is this guy and why is he starting an antique store here? And this little boy goes over there and knocks on the door. He's curious, peeking through the window. And then this Ingmar Bergman type character opens the door, this tall, mysterious looking Swedish fellow, and says, "Oh, hello. What's your name?" "Oh, Jimmy. Would you like to come in and see my store?" And Jimmy's a little scared, but goes in there, and and Jimmy says, "Well, what do you do here?" And he says, "Well, I have things, that are interesting to people. What are you interested in?" And Jimmy says, "Oh, baseball and baseball cards." And then the fellow says, "Oh, well, Jimmy, what's the greatest baseball card of all?" And he says, "Oh, it's the 19 blah 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 Mickey Mantle card. That's the most valuable one." And then the fellow says, "Well, I just have something that might interest you here." And he says, it happens to be a baseball card." And he hands it to the little boy and says, "To Jimmy from Mickey Mantle." And
Wow.
it's that Mickey Mantle card. And he says, would you be interested in that, perhaps, Jimmy?" Jimmy says, "Oh, no, that's worth millions of dollars. I couldn't possibly afford something like that." And he says, "Well, we might be able to make a little deal, Jimmy. Your neighbor, so-and-so, is very obnoxious. And you could go and, throw some dog poo on their front door and run away." And then Jim said, "Well, wouldn't that be a mean thing to do?" So, "Oh, no, no, no. She deserves it. This will be helpful to her." So Jimmy does this, and he gets his baseball card. Then others come in one by one, and the same thing happens. And he gets this town fighting. Yeah, everyone gets some impossibly rare object in order to pull a dirty prank on someone, and he gets everyone hating each other and feeling like real superior with this hatred. And then at the end, the town is in flames. All the homes are on fire. There's burning down, and there's sirens. And he's sitting there in his antique store laughing. And, it's the devil. But that's the same kind of issue that we're dealing with. And that was a long, demented story. But it is this lustful desire to have something special, to be special, that fuels our or hatred. And why is it so hard, Tyann, to be humble? Why are we so reluctant to let go of this vision of ourselves as morally superior?
I think it's painful.
Yeah. And why is it painful, Tyann or Rhonda?
I just think like every time we disarm, it's like a gut punch. Like just first learning the 5 secrets from you, Dr. Burns, and then I'm practicing. Like if my husband told me like, oh, you were being unreasonable, and then disarming is like, yeah, I messed up and I was unreasonable. It hurts. Like it's painful to see ourselves in this fuller light that we are imperfect, and to let go of our natural inclination to protect ourselves, to be defensive.
Yeah.
It's quite painful to do that.
It's the death of the self, right?
Yeah.
The idea that we have some self that has to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That we have to defend against our flaws instead of saying, oh, yeah, that's right. And what can I do?
Yeah. Well, what else? Tell us some other good stuff. This is amazing, Tyann. If I'm a clinician here in Nebraska listening to this show, and I'm thinking about working with couples or even an individual who has a conflict with someone and says, I would like to get closer to my uncle, to my daughter, to my whoever. What are some things I should maybe think about doing? Or if I'm an individual in a conflict with someone I care about, and I'm open to the idea of maybe working on myself, changing something about my own attitude or behavior in order to get closer to that person. What are some take-home messages, keeping in mind I'm not the brightest person, and so make it real simple for me?
You're saying if they're a therapist first and they want to learn, or
yes.
This is also a layperson who wants to improve.
Yeah, either way. What are our take-home messages, which are probably similar for both? But what is the way out of this trap, using the Tyann's beautiful insights about positive reframing and that type of thing?
Yeah, the way out of this trap is probably team therapy. So it's harder to summarize all of these steps in a more succinct way, but if you're a therapist learning this process, I think it's powerful to apply this process to yourself, to your relationships. We do a lot of personal work in team therapy, and then when we're able to heal our own relationships, we can be even more effective in helping our clients.
Well, I'll give one practical tip that I've learned from you. We have this thing that team therapists will be familiar with, and the relationship journal, and people can probably type it into Google and it'll come right up. But it's what did the other person say, and what did you say next? And the other person, we circle all the feelings they were having when they said whatever they said to you, and then you circle all the feelings you were having, and then we talk about doing the EAR, the ear checklist, empathy, assertiveness and respect, et cetera, then step 4 and step 5 and stuff. But what I'm hearing you say is a very potential eye-opening step that we could add to that would be you once you've circled, I mean, typically the other person, you'll circle 10 or 12 or 15 emotions that the other person was having, and 10 or 15 feelings you were having. You feel hurt, you feel upset, you feel angry, you feel anxious, you feel ashamed, you feel discouraged, you feel frustrated, and so forth. And the other person is feeling a whole ton of feelings too, and maybe to start positively reframing the other person's feelings as well as your own. Would that be like a practical thing that we might want to add to that technique that we're not emphasizing right now.
To your feelings, but to your communication errors. How do those behaviors serve you when you're defensive?
Okay. The communication errors as well as the emotions. So we have a wealth of new things that we can target with positive reframing.
Right. Even like defensiveness is my way of protecting myself, standing up for myself, having a voice.
And the other person is doing that also.
Yeah.
Being defensive and protecting myself and having a voice. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for these many gifts today.
And before we wrap up, I don't know if we have the time. Do we, Rhonda?
Oh, I was just going to say, Tyann, you're talking about training therapists. I introduced you in the beginning as somebody who trained therapists. You've created this relationship course, which, you've put together the process of the TEAM CBT process of helping clients improve their relationships. And, as a team therapist who's promoting, who's conducting TEAM CBT with people who want to heal their relationship, how could people learn from you how to do this? Because it's sparking my interest. I want to. And
yeah, though those of us who are slow learners, we're saying this. Tyann is one hell of a fantastic scholar and teacher and therapist, and I want to learn more from her. How do I do that, Tyann? Where do I go? What do I sign up for?
I have a 14-week TEAM CBT course specifically dedicated to relationships and couples, and that will start again on January the 4th. And they can just go to my training website. It's courses.teamcbttraining.com/relationships. And then they'll be able to see all the information about that.
Tyann, do you know what time the class will be? Is it a live class or something that
It is live. Yeah, it's live with didactic teaching, and then there's an opportunity to see me demo each of the tools through the 14 weeks, and then they'll get a chance to practice with a group leader as well.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds fantastic, and I'm sure it'll be very, very popular, but since I'm one of our simpler listeners, I want to see if I got it right. Courses.TeamCBT, which is all one word, TEAMCBT.com.
TEAM CBT training.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't get that, and I wouldn't have found it. TEAM CBT training. Is that all one word?
Yeah, courses.teamcbttraining.
That's one word. TeamCBTtraining.com/relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so one more time. Courses.teamcbttraining, all one word, .com/relationships. And it's a 14-week training program starting January 4th. What day of the week is that?
It's a Thursday.
It's a Thursday. And what time on a Thursday?
It's 10:30 to 12:30 Central Time, so it'll be 8:30 to 10:30 Pacific Time.
Okay. Fantastic. And then I'll learn these techniques, and there will be this. So it's 8:30 to 10:30 Pacific Time and 9:30 to 11:30 East Coast Time.
That's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I got a bit lost in that.
8:30 to
8:30 Pacific Time.
to 1:30 to 1:30 or 8:30 to
8:30
it'll
to
be
10:30.
11:30 to 1:30 East Coast Time.
Right. So
Yes.
8:30 to 10:30 Pacific Time, 10:30 to 12:30 Central Time, and 11:30 to 1:30 East Coast Time.
Yeah. So any of you, and can any mental health professional attend that?
Yes.
And how about lay therapists, pastoral counselors, coaches?
Any mental health professional. I have had coaches, and anyone who's just working with couples who would like to understand more and learn more about the TEAM process on treating relationship issues
And
in
then
couples.
if I'm a non-shrink listener with a troubled relationship, when will you have the class for us who aren't professionals but will also want to learn from TIAN?
Not quite sure.
Okay, well, you think about that.
Maybe Rhonda can create that for us.
Well, that could be too. Yeah, but I think that
in partnership with you, TIAN.
Yeah, you could probably find a lot of troubled couples who would want to do something like that, and people would probably benefit greatly from it. But thank you so much for your just beautiful training today. You're always a joy. You're always thoughtful. You always have warm, creative, brilliant insights for us, and you're always offering great, innovative classes and courses for therapist training, so you can hone your skills, grow personally, and have fun all at the same time.
Well said. Ditto.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's just truly such a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, see you all next week, and thank you for listening. We
forgot the most important thing.
Yes, 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear TIAN. Happy birthday to you. Because today is TIAN's birthday.
Yay.
The best rendition of the happy birthday song I've ever heard.
Big hugs to you, TIAN. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
All as well. Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.